This is just the beginning.
Hello, and thank you for joining us today. Welcome to our audiences on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, and of course on the Axios website. I'm coming to you live from my home in Washington, D.C. This is our fourth virtual event, The Pandemic Pivot, the Small Business Recovery, a 6-part series. And today, we're focusing on Colorado. Last week, we spoke with business leaders and policymakers in Texas. Today, we're heading west to speak with Colorado Governor Jared Polis and a small business owner in Denver about how small businesses have innovated and are introducing new digital tools to guide their path to recovery. Today's show is 30 minutes with 3 10-minute segments about how small businesses are pivoting during the coronavirus. I'll also be joined by my boss, Axios co-founder and CEO, Jim Vandehei. Thank you to our partner, Facebook, for making this show possible today. We will be taking some audience questions, so be sure to tweet at us using the hashtag Axios Events and follow us at Axios Online. For the latest news, please follow our dashboard on Axios.com. And now, joining us from Denver, Colorado, we have Colorado Governor Jared Polis. Governor, welcome and thank you.
Hi, Sarah. Like you, I'm at home. That's what we all are doing these days.
It's wild that we're all at home and that we're doing these events virtually. I want to start with one of the things that you recently made mandatory. You said that in Colorado, face masks are now mandatory. You know, we're 4 months into this pandemic. So why did you wait until now to say that face masks would be mandatory? And what brought you to that decision?
Well, you know, one of the reasons that I think Colorado is doing relatively well, we're not doing well enough, but the infection rate is lower than most of our neighboring states, is we really adopted mask wearing culture early. I've worn a mask in all my public appearances. We've given free masks to people, really starting in late March, early April. We really went full go in this direction. In fact, we had about 60% of the state that had mask wearing requirements as of a week ago. In fact, some of those, like Boulder County, where I live, Larimer County, have had mask wearing requirements for 2 months. So this was really just, okay, what about that final 40% of the state that didn't have it? Because you know what, people travel a lot around our state. We have lots of tourists. And also, how do we just get that clarity of message? Like, you're in Colorado, you wear a mask, which even though most of our population, had a mask wearing requirement, we just wanted to make it a little bit more universal.
And before we jump into small businesses while we're on COVID, I want to ask, what do you make of the federal government's response to the pandemic, and how does that compare to Colorado's response?
Well, we've had 50 different responses in each state. Each of us as governors has really largely been on our own to do the best we can. Obviously, we appreciate any supplies or help we get from any source. We've purchased tests from South Korea. We've gotten some from our federal government. We've worked with labs and developed others. But what we really need, because we do have freedom of movement between our borders, is we really need a better coordinated national response. And that's what's been frustrating and it's been so elusive. I mean, Colorado is doing even better, but we have a lot of visitors and tourists from Arizona, California, Texas, and it's hard to do well in isolation when you have, July 4th weekend alone, 75 to 100,000 people from Arizona, Texas, and California enjoying our great state.
You mentioned you're working on some things in biotech with vaccines. I know technology is a big part of your small business community, so is energy. Can you walk us through which small businesses, which types are being uniquely impacted by this pandemic?
Our Colorado small businesses are resilient. They're creative. Of course, we actually have teams that are working on vaccines. There's a team at Colorado State University in Fort Collins. There's clinical tests that are being done of other vaccines through Anschutz. But I mean, there's such an amazing creativity among the small business people of Colorado. I mean, you and I are at home, right? We're going out less. That means occasionally ordering meals in. There's a lot of local delivery services. There's restaurants that have really embraced that and have their own delivery people expanded into that so they don't have to work with a third-party delivery service. There's all kinds of individual innovation. While it's tough on a lot of small businesses, there's others that have used this as an opportunity to really figure out how they can position themselves better for the future. And a lot of businesses who have a lot of telecommuters are figuring out how they can lease less office space, reduce their office overhead, because guess what? They can be just as efficient, if not more, by having a significant portion of their workforce telecommute.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective, that small businesses might innovate long term in ways that they wouldn't have if it were not for the pandemic. You yourself, Governor, have had a big impact on the small business recovery. In late June, you signed a few bills, I think about $270 million worth of small business relief. Can you talk about how those programs are working?
Yeah, one of the things that small businesses are experiencing is what we call a capital crunch, meaning it's hard to raise money within your revenues dry up. How do you get through this period? First of all, very grateful for the Paycheck Protection Program. So many Colorado small businesses were able to get 2 months of payroll from the federal government, but it's not enough. So we did two things here in Colorado. We created a $20 million fund that will basically be targeted to help businesses that weren't able to or weren't eligible to participate in Paycheck Protection Program as a priority. And then we established a larger $250 million Climber Fund, which is a loan facility for businesses that aren't quite able to be creditworthy to get the loans they need directly from banks, but are able to have some state allocation for what we call a first loss provision. And they're therefore able to access those credit facilities that will help them keep the doors open for the next 6 months or a year as we head towards recovery.
You mentioned the PPP loans, and one of the things Axios reporter Dan Primack has been looking into is whether or not a lot of those funds get wasted because they are misapplied or because they're allocated to the wrong places. How can you ensure that this $270 million of relief is going to be going to the right people and is going to be effective in Colorado?
So we did a big push around small businesses, and I think it's hitting the mark largely. I think we got data back that the average PPP loan size was about 80,000 in Colorado. So it's helping those small businesses, right? I mean, we'd be a lot more worried if the average loan was 500,000 or a million. We'd say, wait a minute, maybe it was too complicated and only the bigger medium businesses got it. But a lot of small businesses got it. Some that weren't eligible, we do have that catch-all $20 million program. And we really work closely with our bankers. A lot of them work through the weekend. A lot of our small businesses have that banking relationship to make sure they got their paperwork in, because this is tough on everybody. But we know that we can get through it if we can survive this capital crunch over the next few months and our small businesses are able to rebound.
You recently extended some of that small business pandemic relief, I believe, for another month on Sunday, just to ensure that not just the small businesses, but also the residents can pay their rent, can stay up to date on their utilities and their bills. Do you worry, though, that if you extend another month now and the pandemic continues, you're just going to have to keep extending month after month?
Well, we were able to deploy about $19 million of the CARES Act coronavirus response money towards renter assistance to basically help people make their rent. So, if rent's about, $1,500, you're helping probably 15,000 Coloradans stay in their homes through this difficult period where they may be out of work, unemployment may lapse. So that was a critical piece of this too. And just really giving everybody the breathing room to get through this public health crisis, which we're battling every day, and really work towards a robust and strong economic recovery in which businesses, small and large, can thrive.
You mentioned at the top of the program, there's a lot of tourism to Colorado. People want to come in the summer and go hiking. Now, that could be great for some of your small businesses, but it also positions you to be vulnerable to new coronavirus cases. So how are you balancing that tough act between bringing in people for your small businesses, but making sure you're not spreading COVID?
One of the things that we're fortunate about is a lot of our tourism is around outdoor experiences, which are inherently safer. We're not a place like Washington, D.C., where people come to visit museums and stay indoors. People come out here to hike, to mountain bike, to fish, to hunt, to experience the great outdoors in a way that's naturally socially distanced. And of course, given this health crisis, they're making even more deliberate efforts. That doesn't mean we don't need to take additional measures around the downtown areas of our mountain resort towns. That's one of the reasons we went with the mask wearing statewide, is we wanted that clarity to anybody visiting our state. The Colorado is a mask wearing state. We care about our people that work in our hotels, that work in our restaurants, that work in our stores. We want to keep them as safe as reasonably possible.
And other than, putting your mask on and being a good citizen, what advice would you give to the people in the state of Colorado about how to support small businesses as they go through this really difficult time?
We launched a COVID relief fund, helpcoloradonow.org. We've raised over $20 million. It's gone out to community nonprofits. Some of them are helping local small businesses, helping renters stay in their homes. It's been wonderful to see the business community and individuals and philanthropy step up. Businesses have been great about instituting really good protocols to keep people safe, right? So, I've seen many go above and beyond. Local pharmacies that have erected fiberglass to protect the cashiers from the individuals, folks that have limited the number of people in their store in a very safe way. So it goes well beyond the mask wearing. And we've seen a lot of small businesses really lead the way in providing that safe customer experience, because that's what brings customers back when they know it's reasonably safe to do. And really, customers value the small businesses that have gone above and beyond.
Governor Jared Polis, I believe a lot of states are going to be looking at some of the relief measures that you've taken and following suit. So thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Sarah.
And up next, we have a new View from the Top segment with Facebook Policy Programs Manager for Economic Development, Diana Dukas, and Axios CEO, Jim Vandehei.
Thank you, Sarah. It's now my pleasure to bring you a conversation with Diana Dukas, who is Facebook's Policy Program Manager of Economic Impact, which loosely translated means she helps Facebook help small businesses. Diana, thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
In these times where everybody is we're sitting at home, we're quarantined, businesses are taking a tremendous hit. One of the things that you spend a lot of time on is how can Facebook create tools to help small businesses navigate from a physical presence to a digital presence. Talk about that. What are the tools that Facebook offers today that they might not have offered before, or that you're sharpening to make companies more viable in this moment?
Sure. So Facebook has always been there to support small businesses, knowing that it is a great platform for small businesses to enter the economy, to set up their own page, their own workshop, and connect with customers that they have and find new audiences. So from the beginning of the crisis, we knew that we needed to act to further support small businesses, in addition to the traditional educational resources and trainings that we provide. We launched a business resource hub that has had tips and tools and trainings. It's had free digital marketing curriculum, and also allows you to navigate our platforms and our products to make sure that you're able to present yourself and find new customers in the best way online that you can.
And I would assume that the industry, or one of the industries you've been able to help the most, is retail. A lot of these, especially mom and pop shops that might have been a physical shop before, are now having to suddenly sell everything digitally. If I'm a small business owner and I need to sell my product on Facebook, what are the tools that you offer me that I might not find somewhere else?
So we have our traditional pages, we have our groups, but a really wonderful product that we launched during COVID over the last couple of months is Facebook and Instagram shops, which basically allows for a small business to set up its digital and virtual storefront. It is completely customizable. A small business can pick specifically what products they want a customer to see. They can cater to their customer, and again, make it have an incredibly personal feel. So it's like you're visiting a physical shop.
And how many small businesses are you able to touch, able to help? I would assume almost every small business that's fighting for survival is going to take the opportunity of the Facebook platform, the opportunity of these tools. Do you have a sense of how many companies are gravitating towards Facebook in this moment?
We're very proud to say that over 160 million small businesses use the platforms and our products globally. And we want to continue to be that support for them. And so if we can help one small business transition from mostly offline to online, we are here to help them do that and find the customers and the support that they need. So we have free digital tools and trainings. The majority of our platforms and products are free. And so we encourage for small businesses to visit our business resource hub to explore all of the different products that we have so that they can navigate this challenging time.
Female-run businesses, small businesses, have taken a particularly hard hit thanks to the coronavirus, or no thanks to the coronavirus. Why is that? What is your research showing? Why is it that women-run businesses are taking it harder? And what are the tools that you're making available specifically to women-run businesses?
Sure. So you'll see that about 55% of women businesses are actually sole proprietors, and they many times will turn to digital platforms like Facebook and Instagram to set up their business and to enter the marketplace. You're also seeing from a report that we did with Small Business Roundtable back in May on the state of small business, is that about 33% of women-owned businesses are finding that household responsibilities are falling to them. And in a report that we just released with the World Bank and the OECD, we're actually seeing a 12% discrepancy and disparity between women businesses and men businesses run by men, where 12% of those businesses more are closing if they're run by women. And so we are here to be a resource and a platform so that women-owned businesses, sole proprietors, anyone can come and easily use our tools and platforms to reach their markets that they need.
If you can sort of look into your crystal ball and think about all the changes that have taken place for small businesses, for society, when you think about small businesses and the tools that you are offering and the data that you're seeing, what outlasts this moment? I assume that there's a vaccine and the coronavirus is something of the past. What are the things that we're doing now that we might not have been doing before that you think, you know what, this is going to be a big part of the small business life forever, regardless of the virus?
Well, the number one thing I actually want to point out is optimism, which sounds a little ironic during this time, being that small businesses are really having a very difficult time. But in our report with the OECD and the World Bank, we're finding that 65% of small businesses actually feel optimistic about their future. And if anyone is going to be optimistic, it's going to be that entrepreneurial spirit that entrepreneurs and small businesses have. So one, optimism. But two, I think that the pandemic has really accelerated a transition to digital tools and platforms. And so we hope as Facebook to continue to provide the educational resources, the product resources, and any other ways that we can support small businesses as they continue to that transition to be fully present online, or as much as they can be.
Diana, as we wrap up, if I'm a small business owner who's currently not using any of the Facebook tools, but I'm struggling, I'm trying to figure out a way to keep my business viable, what would I do? Like, what is the first step I would take? How would I start to take advantage of some of these tools?
Absolutely. So please come to facebook.com/business. You'll find our business resource hub. And there you will find sector by sector guides. You'll find free curriculum that will help you learn about our products, how to set up a page, how to work with shops, our fundraisers or gift cards, any other tools that you may be able to find to help support you. And there really are easy step-by-step guides to help you get there.
Diana Dukas, thank you for this conversation. Thank you to Facebook for making this broader discussion about small businesses, about survival kits in a tough time possible. Thank you very much. And back to you, Sarah.
Thank you, Jim. And our next guest is joining us from Denver. He's the owner of the Coffee at the Point in Denver. Ryan Cobbins, welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for being with us. I want to talk to you about small business recovery in Colorado and in Denver. What are you and your other peers that are small business owners seeing? How is recovery going for you all?
You know, it's a slow moving process. I think what's happening now there's two different groups. One group is definitely feeling a tremendous hurt about what's happening. We have definitely legacy businesses, restaurants and so forth that have been open for 40 years that are now closing, which is a complete tragedy. And then there's other groups that are seeing some advantage in terms of like Coffee at the Point. We've taken the advantage of reviewing our process and procedures, getting to know our staff on a deeper level, reviewing our vendors and so forth. So we're taking that time now and following through on those processes that we should have been following through before, but this period kind of gives us the time to do so.
Right. And have you found that during this period, it's sort of forced you to take on new technologies, new partners? I know a lot of small businesses are partnering with Uber Eats or Postmates on new mechanisms for delivery and takeout. Are you doing anything like that?
You know, we've kind of stayed consistent with what we've been doing all along. I have different feelings around some of the delivery apparatuses that are coming up now in terms of whether or not it's profitable in the long run. I think for us, this slow period has kind of allowed us, like I mentioned, just to review some of our process and procedures. And everything's about perspective. We're 10 years old this year, and folks would call and ask, "Are you okay, Ryan? How are things going?" And I reminded them that, we opened up 2010 during the height of the economic downturn in an area of Denver that's revitalizing. And so the first year was crazy, tremendously challenging. The first 4 or 5 years were challenging. And really the first, 5 or 6 years were challenging. Now, so coming out of this now, we've already stretched our muscle in terms of dealing with some very significant challenges.
Yeah, it's amazing to hear from small business owners like you that have been through this sort of financial crisis, not just once, but twice. Can you walk me through how the reopening process is going? I know you have your lobby and your patio open. I know masks are now mandatory in the state of Colorado. How is that all working?
It's going probably as well as it probably could. We've reduced our hours during this period. And so where we used to be open from 6 a.m. to 10, now we're 7 to 7 throughout the course of the week. We are one of the larger coffee shops in Colorado. And so we are a little over 3,000 square feet of space. And so out of the 15 or so tables that we typically have, I was able to remove 2 or 3 tables and then space everything out to be COVID compliant in terms of making sure everything is at least 6 feet apart. And then same thing with our patio, we were able to space things out. We're doing everything that we possibly can in terms of ensuring that we are Colorado COVID careful is what we call it. And so ensuring that our staff are wearing masks at all times, that we're washing hands frequently, and that we are also making sure that we take care of our customers in the sense of, in essence, we provide them masks if they don't need one, or if they don't have one, we'll provide a mask. And a few other things that we try to do to make sure everybody stays safe.
And it sounds like you're taking all of the measures necessary, but have you explained or heard feedback from your employees that maybe there are things that they want to see improve? Are there things that they have concerns about, or do they mostly seem okay?
From day one, so even for the last 10 years, we've made sure that we listen to our staff. And so, yes, they have voiced concerns. And so one of the reasons why we had masks laid out on our front table is because they voiced a concern about customers coming in not wearing a mask. And if you've read any of the news, you recognize that depending on who you speak to, some people have an extreme affect around masks, and to a point to where they get a little bit abrasive. And so we've been able to kind of brunt some of that by providing masks for customers, but then making sure that our staff stays careful and provide them with the language to actually speak to customers in an appropriate way so that things don't escalate. And so yeah.
We heard from your governor yesterday, Jared Polis, and one of the things he was saying was that he signed into law a bunch of bills in late June that would give relief to small businesses. Have you looked into any of those programs? Are you hearing anything about their effectiveness?
One of the things that we looked into, obviously, is the grant program that's taking place. And the state had some specific things. And then also the area that we're in has some specific grants. And so being able to apply for those have been important to us. And so, and we continue to kind of listen, and at the end of the day, this is a challenge that not just Coffee at the Point's facing, but this is something that's kind of worldwide. And so we make sure that we remain flexible to all the changes that are coming out.
You all are a very important part of your community. Obviously, small town and big city coffee shops are part of people's everyday routines. How are you giving back to the community? Are you doing anything to help out healthcare workers or first responders?
It's a very interesting time. And so before this, we would donate 95% of our space to different groups. Now we're not able to have that many meetings right now. And so, what we do is we provide, we've purchased these coffee sleeves that are community coffee sleeves, and a percentage of all the coffee sleeves that go out, they donate to different charities. And so, and then we also provide some coffee and relief to folks in terms of donating large Cambros, we call it, of coffee to groups.
It's such a hard time for your business, but to hear that you're giving back during that hard time is really uplifting. I want to talk about one other thing before we let you go. You've had a long-term program called the Cops and Coffee program, where you help work with law enforcement in your local community. giving them coffee. Obviously, there's a huge conversation nationally right now around police reform. Walk us through that program really quickly and how it may have changed in light of the recent events.
Yeah, absolutely. And so real briefly, one of the things we recognize is that challenge that cops in our neighborhood or our communities have. And so we provide free coffee or any drink, actually, for any police officer that comes in. We want to make sure that our police are able to come into our community and see our community. And at the same time, we want to make sure our community gets a chance to get to know our police officers. And I think once that happens, we start to recognize that these people are our brothers, our sisters, our moms, dads, aunts, uncles, and so forth. And so it's been an important part, especially for me, somebody who actually appreciates police, but also recognizes that there's some challenges and reforms that need to be done as well.
Ryan Cobbins, is so excellent to hear from you. Best of luck to you and the rest of your business throughout the pandemic. And we look forward to staying in touch. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thanks, Sarah.
And thank you to everyone who has joined the event this afternoon for another great virtual conversation that I know has made everyone, including myself, smarter, faster. If you like this conversation and would like to sign up for more information, definitely visit signup.axios.com to see any of our newsletters. We've also just relaunched 2 new Axios podcasts, Axios Recap and Axios Today. You can find them on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. Join us next week for our next event in this series, sponsored by Facebook, which will spotlight women in businesses in Nevada. We'll hear from Senator Jackie Rosen and other small business owners. And again, thank you so much to our partner, Facebook, for sponsoring today's event and making it possible. Thank you to everyone and have a great rest of your week.